Hi everyone, this is Elizabeth Wood, and we're doing a New Earth conversation with my very sweet and smart friend, Lori Spagna. And I'm really glad to do this. She's really special to me, and we've grown closer, and I'm excited to have her on my show. And so Lori is actually a best-selling author. She's a spiritual catalyst, an intuitive and energy healer. She's an ascension guide, a multidimensional channel, an animal communicator, a visionary, a light worker, a starseed, and she's radically transformed her life after a series of near-death experiences and an induction experience while living in Maui. Sorry guys, my phone started ringing. Hang on. That was an annoying mistake, sorry. Lori's also helped to transform the lives of many thousands of people and, of course, animals all around the world via her channeled ascension guidance, her intuition, energy healing, and animal communication. And I'm one of those people. And she leads seminars, workshops, retreats, where she provides a lot of ascension training, sacred energy healing transmissions, and dormant DNA and sacred key code activations, which we're definitely talking about today, for humans and animals to assist everyone to awaken to their alignment with the true divine source which resides within them. And so all beings can live their best life ever. I love that. Thank you, Lori. I'm really glad you're here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Elizabeth, for having me. I'm so excited. So excited about our conversation and to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So let's jump right in because this is a deep conversation and we've got a lot of really interesting things to cover. And so as everyone on the call knows, just as you all love DNA, we love DNA just as much. And as all of you know, DNA is one of the things that has been a hot topic for a while. But here's the deal about DNA. It's such a fabulous technology, and so much of it has been lying dormant for so long. And furthermore, you know, the spiritual community has often, you know, very loudly talked about how there's no junk DNA, number one. And number two, that DNA is not all it seems. It's not just a 3D material thing. It's a multi-dimensional thing. And recently, Lori and I were talking about how the science community's technology has gotten good enough that they've been actually able to go in and see new structures in DNA that we've never seen before. And this is really important. This is profound because this is what the spiritual community has been talking about for so long. And so, Lori, if you would actually elaborate some more, you've been involved in the spiritual community a lot longer than me. Tell us more about this understanding of DNA from the spiritual perspective.
Yeah, so, well, let's start with this, that, where do I want to begin? Because we really did jump. We didn't ease our way into it. So first, let's understand this. We know up until 2012. First of all, let's just jump back and say this. A few years ago, everyday people like us would never be having a conversation like this. The old belief system is that it was just too complicated and too far out there for us to even understand. And the scientific community, this is like prior to 2012, had this kind of, we're the only ones who know, and you, everyday people, cannot understand this. Yeah. So in a sense, that's a suppression of information because they treated the masses like, in a way, unknowingly maybe, or maybe knowingly, like idiots.
Yeah.
So of course, this information, we didn't know it. We didn't explore it. But essentially, for me personally, I want to say I've been doing DNA activations for people and animals for now at least 12 years, maybe even closer to 15 years in a sense, if you take into account the time when I was in Maui and I didn't know what I was doing. So everything I know about the DNA activations in a sense and what I do and what we'll talk about today regarding the DNA is linked to that, to me, the what I call an induction, abduction experience that I had in Maui.
Yeah.
My star family, which we'll talk about that more too, basically brought me, transported me on ship,
Yep.
and started to activate me because I didn't know any of this stuff before then.
Yeah.
I didn't read any of this in a book. I didn't learn this from science. I didn't get any of it. I know there are now more and more people doing DNA activations, but nobody taught me.
Yeah.
I didn't, even if I heard how somebody else might have done it, I was already doing it.
Yeah.
So what I'm sharing is my unique perspective based on what I've learned from my experience and from doing it for myself and for others for certainly over 12 years. And I want to say it's all documented in my notes. Like I can go back to notes,
Awesome.
dated and certainly teleconferences from 10 years ago, like when teleseminars we were first recording things, even then, I have all of these DNA activations that go back that far.
Yes.
And so what I want to say is that what science is now discovering, that there are more letters in the DNA, right? And we'll ease into this some more too, but is a reflection of what the light workers have been doing on faith for 12 years or 15 years or however long.
Yeah.
This is what's so pivotal about this, right? Because we know if science is now just validating, in this recent article, we talked about that there are 4 more codes in the DNA, right? We know just recently science documented this, credible scientists, credible scientific journals, that now DNA has 4 more letters. That is a reflection of what we have been doing energetically on faith with no scientific evidence for at least 15 years. Well, I'm saying 12 to 15 years.
Yeah.
At least. Now that's right there. That right there is one of the most important things we'll talk about. Because why? Because this is how healing works. This is how transformation works. The physical world doesn't show us.
Right.
We do it energetically. We make the transformation from within. So why is this so important? And then we'll talk more about the DNA. Interrupt me anytime, Elizabeth.
Oh, you're fine. I'm listening.
Okay, because I could talk for a long time.
Right.
Why is this so important? This is so important because whoever you are and whatever's going on in your life, whether you have a physical disease, a financial issue or financial challenges, whether you have emotional issues or you're working through emotional, that's one of my issues. Sometimes I get very emotionally because I'm a feeler. If you have relationship issues, whatever it is, those issues, especially, this is really great to understand, physical issues, when you resolve them inside of you, the physical world will demonstrate the results after.
Yes.
That is why this is so important for us, because what's important for us as light workers is not the 4 more codes were discovered or 4 more letters in the DNA.
Right.
That's great for the rest of the mainstream world. But for us, it's validation of everything we do. That what we do internally on faith with the non-physical world, the physical world will show us after. Yeah. It's testament of faith proved.
Measurable
faith.
Results.
Measurable results. So it may seem basic to us, but the implications of this is so far reaching in terms of the spiritual lightworker tribe, because not that we needed that, we never needed it, or else I wouldn't have kept doing DNA activations over and over again. Yeah, I wouldn't have been doing them if I was waiting for the physical world to prove it. Yeah, and even in all of my calls where we've been doing this for so many years, I'm always translating it for people in the sense of, okay, here's what I understand these codes to mean. This is how I'm translating what I have. This is what I can tell you from my perspective and from the way I've translated it from the non-physical realm. This is how I'm bringing this from the non-physical into the physical for you,
Yes.
whoever's participating, and what this means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever have scientific proof. So I just think that's so pivotal there. Does that, I know that makes sense to you. I think
It
it's
does.
so
It makes a lot of sense. And it also, what I want to mirror back is, the validation that this work has a material manifestation, a measurable result in the 3D, and that this is the work. This is the work. We're grounding multidimensional work into the material, and that's what being human's all about. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And this is the work of star seeds and light workers, in my opinion, because everything about ascension and the ascension plan, the plan for the awakening of humanity, has been assigned to those of us who I call myself a first waver. All of us are members of the indigo family, the indigo races. Mm-hmm. And the indigo races are those beings who identify as indigo tribes, right? And I can better define that if we need to. And our job is to facilitate working with the non-physical and bring that into the physical, so that the physical can be up-leveled.
Yeah.
And so to me, the whole DNA conversation is just proof.
Yeah. And it's the foundation of it, right?
Not that I needed it, but I understand most of the time, first waivers don't really need the proof. We rarely need proof. We don't need
right.
proof. We don't need to, we're not even believers. I say I'm not a believer, I'm a knower.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just,
no.
I don't need proof. I don't believe. But second waivers who are waking up, and understand, second waivers just have a different task. Their task is to work among the mainstream. Our task as first waivers is to work in the non-physical realm and live among the mainstream. But we don't work. We don't really, I tend to be sometimes seem a little ungrounded to some people, maybe. Not ungrounded, but I walk around like, I just walk around my life like everything's possible and the universe is good. I just say those things. Sometimes people think you're out there,
Sure.
But to me, that's not my personal reality. That's just an overlapping reality. Mm-hmm. That's just an experience. That's not part of my real.
Yeah. Lori,
but second waivers are in that,
Yeah. Lori, how does someone know is there like a time date stamp, or how does someone know if they're a first waiver or a second waiver?
Well, okay, so understand this is very self-defined, but this is what I have from the non-physical is that you have kind of like 4 waves, and all waves are it's more like the jobs you took on based on your soul's agenda, your soul's mission, and what evolution you as an individual had made in linear time, in your soul, plus how you could serve and contribute best, right?
Yes.
But it is linked to linear time to some degree. So you have like your pre-waivers and pre-scouts. Who are the pre-waivers and pre-scouts? Dolores Cannon, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra. They're pre-waivers, pre-scouts. Michael Beckwith. People who wrote books, taught about it, but they're not really high vibe energetic beings. And not that there's nothing wrong with them. They themselves, if you listen to Dolores Cannon's, she's not physically alive anymore. She says it herself. She talked about that wave that was going to wake up. So these are pre-waivers, pre-scouts. They're all kind of an older generation, and they tended the soil.
Yeah.
They made the soil fertile so that we could be seated here. So first waivers are beings who typically were online. When I say online, what do I mean? Awake and actively engaged in this work no later than 2011, in my opinion.
Okay.
because why? 2012 was a pivotal point. So you had to have enough people anchored in the physical world, holding the light, being able to embody the light and to know it wasn't the end of the world, and that there was a whole new birth happening at that pivotal point. And everybody who's a first waver, in my opinion, had done so much inner work on themselves by 2011 that they were not able to be swayed or dissuaded. We were doing the work. We were anchoring in that light. We were preparing for ascension for the rest of the planet. But we were hidden away, tucked away. I was off, prior to that in Maui. I mean, I was certainly home from Maui at that point, but by that point, but people, we hadn't united through the internet. Okay. And second wavers are people who are waking up mostly between 2012 and now through 2020. So this is the time when second wavers are coming online.
Gotcha.
And they're listening, they're engaged, they know it's real, but they're among the masses. So usually a second waver is somebody who is working in everyday life or has an everyday family or who is in business somewhere, but they're into this stuff.
Yeah.
And they know that they're much more typically advanced, so to speak, than most of their colleagues or their family members or the people they interact with on a daily level. And they're bringing this energy and this consciousness into the mainstream.
Mm.
And the mainstream are, to me, the third wavers. And they're not even scheduled really to wake up, but you can see little energy.
Little glimpses.
It is happening. But they're really not scheduled to have their massive wake-up call until 2020.
Okay.
This is how I see it and perceive it.
Yeah.
But we're all in our own reality. So we have overlapping reality, but
we do. We have lots of overlapping reality. I really like the description of that. I love the description too of pre-wavers. I actually, I've met Deepak Chopra in person and can attest to that very earthy feeling from him energetically. And it's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Very good. So if we were to then go back to our main branch of our topic here, we know even in science at this point that DNA not only contains incredible amounts of info. I mean, one strand of DNA has more memory than all the computers on the whole planet combined. Mm-hmm. And that's just one strand. Mm-hmm. So your whole body is this incredible Library of Alexandria full of info. And a lot of that info is our ancestral trauma. Among other things, it's information, of course, about the history here on Earth. And it's also information from our starseed families as well that's encoded there. Yes. And we know that DNA also is activated by sound and by light, both of which can be easily translated together because they're both wavelengths. And so we know this in science. We know it. It's a fact. It's a grounded fact. So that is even, again, another beautiful validation of the work that people have been already doing for so long, 15 years on DNA. And so tell us a little bit about activations and how they work and how you learned how to do them.
Yeah. Well, so first I want to say about the energetics of light and sound that can activate DNA. I know that's factual, but there's some codes I personally believe there are certain things that have to be identified.
Okay.
Because this is part of consciousness expansion.
Yeah.
So identification is critical. So can we table that and come back to it? That
Please.
Topic is so important. But let's just talk about the ancestors and how that's related to the DNA. Let's understand the first two strands of DNA, which we've all been living with. Mm-hmm. Prior to 2012, everything beyond the first two strands was labeled as junk by the scientific community prior to 2012. In 2012, credible scientists documented that the other 10 strands are not junk, they're dormant.
Yeah.
Okay, what are the two strands? So prior to 2012, everybody bought into the belief that you were a victim. We were a victim of those two strands. And what does that mean? essentially, if you have codes in the DNA that say you have breast cancer in your family, look at what Angelina Jolie did. She
Right.
sliced them off, right? And that was her idea of prevention, but because otherwise she was a victim. But meanwhile, the DNA doesn't run just in your breasts. I mean,
No.
whatever. So don't let me get, I don't want to be my
That's okay. I think we're on the same page on that one.
That's the concept of the first two strands of DNA. And the idea was if you had something bad in your DNA, you were stuck with it.
Yeah.
Then we get some of these most wonderful teachers right around 2012 start coming up. The most famous one is I can't even remember his name, but everybody loves him. He's so wonderful. What's his name? You know who I'm talking about. It'll come if it's meant to.
Yeah.
And he starts teaching about how, well, the DNA will either be sort of turned on based on based on the environment and what you put your attention on.
Yes.
And that's nice too. That's nice. But no, it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
The first two strands of DNA are carrying the records of the ancestors, of what gifts they left for us to claim.
Yeah.
This is pivotal. So if there's a record, for example, of diabetes or of cancer, the record of that DNA is not meant to incite fear as it does in the 3D. You might get breast cancer, so you have to slice your breasts off. No, the record is your ancestors did not know how to nurture and enjoy mothering, or perhaps they judged and criticized and condemned themselves for their mothers, or maybe they judged and criticized their mothers. Maybe they were angry and resentful, and they didn't understand how to nurture their life and forgive and etc. Okay, it's up to us to go in, look at the record, and claim those gifts and understand that those two strands are just records of gifts that were never claimed.
Yeah.
Once you start to recognize that, you can start realizing that once the gift is claimed, the record completely can be evaporated.
Yep.
What evaporate? Transmuted into higher consciousness.
Yes.
So to me, that's a huge part of what I do. When someone's got something in their lineage, and I mean, we're talking some of the basic things, diabetes, cancer, but financial issues.
Trauma.
Let's say your ancestors lived during the Great Depression, and they couldn't afford to pay money to eat, and a child in their family died because they had no money. That's a trauma that gets imprinted in the first two strands of DNA. There's a record there of maybe it's related to trust that your needs will be met, or whatever. So, and then understand even relationship issues. If you're constantly challenged by relationship issues, maybe in other lifetimes you had massive amounts of betrayal from those you loved or those you trusted. And that's stored somewhere in the records. But okay, science wouldn't necessarily look for a record like that, but a spiritualist, a catalyst, a healer like us, we could find that. We could locate it, and we could understand, and that could be cleared and resolved, that it never again needs to perpetuate. So that's the first two strands. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think it's really key too. I love that you're talking about this in a very positive light, because we aren't victims of that. That trauma does give us gifts.
Yes.
Huge gifts.
Yes.
And we are the generations who are here to help finally claim them. And I love that so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because once we clean these records off, and once we claim them, the gifts.
Yeah.
The other thing that's amazing, okay, we'll get into the next 10 strands, of course. And of course, there's beyond 10 more strands. But once we claim them, we liberate all of humanity from repeating them.
Yep.
And so the future generations, we're leaving only the gifts.
Yeah.
That means the future generations of humanity will no longer have this kind of illness, sickness, or suffering. How quickly can we do that, do you think? My higher guidance says by 2035, the bulk of illness will be Gone. The bulk of illness and disease.
Yes.
Now, is that true on all timelines of all realities of all? Because we still have a whole third wave, 2020, that has to choose to get on board with this. Because
For
if
sure.
they don't, they fractal off.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole other conversation, but they fractal off onto other timelines if they don't choose that. But they have a major wake-up call in 2020 throughout the whole year to keep leveling up. But on the highest, purest, organic, what do I mean by organic? Original, pure, meant for the greatest good of all, with harm to none, ideally, timeline for all of humanity, no illness in our future. No way.
Yeah. And we reclaim the gift of long life. I was just talking about this with my husband yesterday, that the original ancient humans lived up to 1,000 years.
Yes.
And
that's in the DNA.
It is in the DNA. And I told him, I said, parrots live longer than us now. This like, let's change this. This is what's so great about it is that we have the ability to end this. Yes. And that's the gift, reclaiming it. Love it.
Yes. So, all right. So let's talk about the other 10 strands. Yes?
Yes.
So what the other 10 strands are, now this is what science is just figuring out, right? Because in 2012, even after they documented that there's 10 more strands and they're not junk, they're just dormant, they still don't really know what they're for. They're trying to study. This is, by the way, this is why there's so much of a need in science to try to collect your DNA. They work very hard to get DNA.
That's right.
And they want your DNA. A scientist doesn't know it. A person who takes your blood doesn't know it. The medical community doesn't really know that this is the purpose. But those are shipped off to labs and who the hell knows where, and who knows exactly who's looking at your DNA. What are they recording? We don't know all of that. Intuitively, I can go down that path and I can tell you what I know.
Yeah.
But let's diverge that, right? And I know your community's very progressive.
Yeah, they're savvy. They're savvy.
Right. We go down there if we have time for it. But the point is to say everyone wants the DNA because the DNA has all the gifts, not just the gifts of the ancestors, the gifts of the future. It's the most important commodity there is, more important than gold. When even in conspiracy communities and communities like communities like extraterrestrial communities talk about this, they don't even know why the abductions have happened in the past. I know I'm going down an alternate route here of conversation, but I've sat in audiences listening on rare occasions, because I do a lot of expos, to the community who talks about like alien abductions and, alien inquiries, and they don't
even know.
But they don't understand. I'm sitting in the audience listening to these experts try to answer questions of why these abductions have happened. They don't have the answer. I'm like, it's the DNA. They want the DNA.
That's also what I see too, Lori. I'm also right on board with you on that one.
Right. Okay, so let's go to the other 10 strands. So they're trying to figure out, what is this DNA good for? And I mean, the earliest strands, the earliest codons, and the reason I know this is because I've been doing it for 12, 15 years. And I started to watch how stuff starts to get activated and what happens, cause and effect relationship over time through observation. Okay, I'm not a scientist, so I can't case by case document it all. I'm just intuitively watching, paying attention, asking, inquiring, practicing. So the first parts of it are just easy. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's a healer. Everybody's an intuitive. Everybody's an empath. Everybody's a psychic. The more we practice it, the more we develop it, the more we discern, the more we navigate it, the more of those gifts come on. Everybody can communicate with animals. Everybody can communicate with trees and plants. Everybody can communicate with Mother Earth. That's the easy stuff. That's the initial stuff. It's the fun stuff. But let's go even deeper. Wow, you can go so much deeper. Okay, now you're talking about extra dimensional, accessing other dimensions of reality. For example, at a certain point, when I started clearing enough of my own stuff from my lineage, clearing it through my ancestors into the future too, I started having laws talk to me. Laws. What do I mean by laws? Universal laws. And this was a few years ago. I just would start having direct conversation with these laws. Yes, I say a few years ago, maybe like 5 years ago. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit more than that. And these laws talking to me, telling me what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and starting to interact with things from the unknown realms. This is unknown to us, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can go, of course, now we can know quantum physics also validates these laws, but quantum physics is also reflecting the conversations that I've been having for 5 to 7 years. Which comes first? We don't really know, right? But ultimately, it's always a reflection. So that's, for example, laws exist on a 6th dimensional plane. So once I started interacting with them, and over years, the other laws would come to me, and I'd be like, how come I didn't know about you before? I taught a class 3 years ago about the universal laws, and I'd hear from them, well, you didn't have, I wasn't interested in you. You didn't have the qualities necessary.
Yeah.
You didn't have the attributes, the virtues for me to even want to deal with you. You weren't at my frequency. Just because you can reach a 6th dimension doesn't mean that you're at my frequency, and I'm not interested in you before this. And I was like, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So these laws have their own consciousness, discernment, who they're willing to interact with. They govern regardless.
Yeah.
Interacting with us as individuals. That's a whole other thing. It's in the DNA. Okay, let's go even past that.
Yes.
Okay, because it's very easy to interact actually with star family races.
Mm-hmm.
Now, star family races, this is because they're coming into our dimension. They're interacting now on the 3rd dimensional plane in physical with starships, right?
Yes.
Alien abductions is the more malevolent aspect of it. When you start getting into inductions, it's a more benevolent aspect, but it's still, I had a physical experience and a physical reality. They're coming into our reality, right? But in truth, these beings exist on higher dimensional frequencies. So that's also what we can do, interact with them, get to know them, understand what they know, and are here to help us learn. Two-way dialogues, and yes, plasma state, because they're on higher dimensions of reality, 7th, 8th, 9th dimensional planes of existence. So in order for us to interact with them at their frequency, we have to have enough of those codons turned on, enough of that DNA, at least to the degree that we can be at that frequency.
Yes.
That's in the DNA. Now, one other thing, and I'll stop because I can go on forever, is ancient mysteries. For example, you mentioned the aging. Understand some of the things in the DNA that have to be cleared out and reprogrammed, according to the new strands, is aging, is the death and dying process. For example, when we have enough of the codons turned on, aging can not only slow, but it can regress.
Yeah.
The time and space of death, the death experience will completely change to one of your conscious choice, the how, when, what, and where. It's not like you walk around in 3D, you walk around going, I don't know, I could die any moment.
Right.
A meteor could come and kill me.
A lot of fear.
What's
lots
that?
Of fear. Lots of fear.
Fear-based. But now when you've activated enough of this, you start knowing, this is how it's going to happen and when, and this is what I'm choosing. And if that was ever an option, I'm going to clear that out.
Mm-hmm.
So the how, when, and then as you get even deeper into it, you start to understand how much power and influence, I mean that in a benevolent way, not a control, fear-based way, we actually have over our family members and their life, because they're not as conscious. So I am, as a star seed, I am the appointed being for my family lineage. So now I have incredible ability to serve, support, and assist them. And by the way, I'll include my
what a sweetheart.
Right. So, which by the way, I think this is so funny. Her name is Kiko. And one of the things I do is unlock key codes. And I never made the connection with her name, Kiko. One of my clients said it. Do you realize your dog's name is Kiko and you do key codes? And I'm like, oh my God.
That's really great. I love it.
So my story that I do these sacred key code activations that I've been doing. And my dog's name is Kiko. I never made the connection. By the way, when I say we have the ability to affect our animals, my dog's 11. In 11 years since her puppyhood, she has not needed a vet.
Yeah.
She runs and plays. She looks like a puppy. She behaves like a puppy.
Yes.
And yet she's just such a good member of my family pack, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
I know we'll talk about the animals. But anyway, okay, that's a mouthful. I said a lot.
Yeah, let me mirror back a little bit too. So what we're discovering is that the continued clearing of density, trauma, anything that's keeping light from coming in and being retained, basically, that the clearing of this then continues to allow us to have more active experiences and be able to use these bodies more fully with their natural gifts. And I 100% agree with you. We are all psychic. We are all empaths. We're all intuitives. We have these gifts. These are our inherited gifts. And that all of us, anyone who's listening, you are chosen by your own soul to do this work on behalf of your embodiment, your family, your lineage, and humanity. Anyone who's listening.
Can I say something about that that's very important?
Mm-hmm.
We are not able ever to interfere with another soul's journey.
Right.
We are not able to do anything that we think they need.
That's absolutely
that is a very
true,
advanced, and I don't mean to pull rank here or anything like that, but you have to be working with the law of one, which is a universal law. And I understand I could never have gotten to that point if I wasn't first completely honoring the free will choice of others and non-interference. You have to master non-interference. You have to master knowing and honoring others know their free will choices, their right to be right, their right to be wrong, their right to have their experience. You can never interfere with anyone else's journey, not even your family members, not even your animals.
not even your
You have
children.
to master that lesson way before you can start
Absolutely
directly. So understand that's deep, deep, deep in the DNA when you start accessing way deeper codons that allow you to somehow birth that capacity from within you. It's very important that people understand free will law. That is also a law, for the law of intent, consent, and authority. And that is the first law, by the way, that humans must work with. The first law. I mean, the laws are always governing us. Law of cause and effect, for example. It's always governing us, whether we know it or not.
right.
But when you become conscious, start to really wake up, and you're interacting in a more conscious way with these laws, the first one you're going to really learn, the first one that you're going to start interacting with in a conscious and direct way is most likely going to be intent, consent, and authority, which is free will. And it will immediately start teaching you to honor and respect the free will of others, and that you have no right.
Yeah. And that includes children, it includes animals, it includes plants. And in that sense, then the only work that anyone can really do is from within.
Right.
It has to start within, and that I can attest to. The more I worked on my own self, the larger my field got, the more light came in, and the people who chose to stay in my field every day, choosing to be in my field, they too got benefit from it. And I've witnessed the changes in my own children and my husband and my animals, my property, my home.
They get it through osmosis.
Working on me.
Right. They still benefit, even if you're not directly doing anything to them or for them. They'll always benefit.
But they choose that every day. They choose it every day.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very precious. It's precious.
I just have to say, Elizabeth, I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too.
I think you're so awesome.
I think you're awesome too.
I willed you into my life.
Thank you. I willed it too. I choose you.
I'm glad. Yeah.
I love this. I love it. I think it's amazing and beautifully advanced. And this really helps all of us then to be able to recognize what exactly are we doing with DNA?
Yeah.
And what do we attain from there?
Yeah, let me say some other things that are really fascinating in the DNA regarding the codes and the codons. First, for the average person, and this is why a lot of times the mainstream doesn't have access to this kind of, they have access to it now through the internet, of course, but they don't consciously, they're not consciously aware of how real and valid it is. And they wouldn't seek it out, right? They're too busy, like a lot of the mainstream, just believing on TV, the brainwash on television, like, you're just going to get sick. And do you need, ask your doctor.
Oh, I know, it's bad.
Massive brainwashing going on. And I mean, I remember when I was younger and I watched MTV, I noticed this last night because I had the TV on for like 5 minutes. I saw something on MTV, like dating thing. And I remember when I was younger, MTV was full of cool, hip people who were very progressed. They were like, the young people then were like these future, they were interested in news and real world. They were like cool and funky and hip and smart. And now everyone on MTV is like dumb and stupid.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a judgment. That's my style. So please forgive me. I'm arrogant. I don't mean it that way. It's just like you look at them and you're like, that is not who humans really are. That's the brainwashing of what is being enforced on people to believe is the state of humanity.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to get people to conform to, this kind of idiocy.
Yeah.
This ridiculous, I'm so dumb, all I want to do is take pictures of myself all day and look at how everybody else is paying it. It's just, anyway, okay.
It's that culture of death and narcissism.
Right. And the whole, even just, yes, the worst is these commercials by the big pharma.
Yeah.
That are just promoting sickness and illness under the disguise and powerlessness. Ask your doctor. Every commercial is ask your doctor. It's complete brainwashing powerlessness. And that's what's being fed to the third wave. Right. And we just, the gap is often referred to as widening in a lot of ways, because these powers that have controlled the mass media, and they control all the mass media, are giving us BS. Okay, anyway, let's move on. So
you're right. Absolutely. I think everyone's savvy on that end.
Right, I get it.
For sure. Tell us a little more about activations itself, and did you learn these activations from your induction?
Yeah. Okay. So wait, let me say, the point where I was going when I got off on the tangent is that in order to access any of the DNA beyond the first two strands, any of it, there is a gatekeeper code in the DNA. And I'm sure you know what it is?
I could probably guess. Please tell us.
It's compassion. It's a compassion gene.
Mm-hmm.
So that and you could be an everyday person you could see in it, for example, 9/11, when 9/11 happened, that ignited the compassion in the masses. That's the only reason it's really allowed to happen, in a sense. Wow. Because the amount of compassion that was ignited in the masses served actually the greater good. That was ultimately one of the darkest moments of, all of humanity, right? But at the same time, it ignited the compassion to help change.
Yes, absolutely.
But that is the gatekeeper gene. So you can't even get to the other 10 strands, let alone move way beyond, because we know 144, 244, 444 strands of etheric DNA at least is accessible now. But before you can even get to any of that compassion gene has to be opened, right?
Yes.
So that's like a gatekeeper gene, or code. I'm sorry, code. It's a code. Now, once you start getting in there, some of the other fascinating things that need to get cleared out. For example, yes, some of the corrupted programs that people don't know about is huge, because the corrupted programs were put in that DNA by what we could call negative ancestors. We use the word negativity, malevolent, or unkind, whatever, inorganic, not organic to the true original human blueprint. So, for example, you have crucifixion implants. What is a crucifixion implant? It's, first of all, it does link you immediately to that concept of Jesus, suffering, torture, Murder, death, dying, blood. It links you immediately into that, of course.
That if you're good, you have to suffer.
Yes, if you're good, you have to suffer. It's carrying so many. When we call it an implant, it's carrying so many frequencies that have to also be cleared out.
Yeah.
Linked into that, but it's the overall crucifixion of humanity. Cut off from the higher realms, cut off from their Mother Earth, unable to do anything.
Ah, I see.
Bound at the wrists, unable to create, renders them powerless. Now, this implant is in every human being.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be cleared.
Yes.
And they don't even know it's there. So this is why it's so important to understand some things must be labeled, because just listening to sound that does activate and elevate and awaken DNA, if certain codes are in there, and you understand implants are entangled, layers and layers, they're stuck in there because these malevolents knew they had to hide it deep in there. They had to angle it and snarl it to keep people stuck in the matrix. That
like a computer virus that makes it so you function as a slave in the matrix.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So that particular program, for example, it doesn't just automatically get cleared just because you listen to, or just because you own a lot.
Right.
And this is why I think my DNA activations are so critical, because yes, you can awaken strands, but clearing stuff out at the same time, that's part of the work. And identifying those has been one of the most challenging and excruciatingly painful parts for me. For example, I've had a lot of clients who have had addiction issues.
Yeah.
For years, I worked on addiction issues. I have addiction issues in my family lineage that I've had to clean out. And that stuff is really entangled.
Yeah.
It's got so much entanglement. So if you think about the biggest, hugest knot, and you're trying to disentangle this, I'm not good enough. Oh, that's nothing will ever be good enough. Oh, that's the grass is always greener somewhere else. Oh, that is, I'm never satisfied. Oh, there's a program of death and dying. Oh, there's a suicide program in there.
Yep.
All that crap has to be unentangled. And just activating the DNA isn't going to clear all that stuff out. It's going to help loosen. Mm-hmm. That's why we can have a conversation like this.
Yep, exactly.
Make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, and I like to always try to define that and constantly looking for clarity about it. And it's amazing. I love that this has been unfolded so deeply in your work.
Yeah. And I'll say something else. Yeah. Addiction programs, for example, when someone's smoking, if someone's a smoker or using any kind of drugs, I won't include medicinal mushrooms that are hallucinogenic or, ayahuasca in that category so much, because that's a different category. Yeah. But any other form of drugs, where there or cigarettes, narcotics, anything like that, there's always a suicide program in there. Uh-huh. Always. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I say always, okay, I haven't done it for every human on planet Earth, but I've always found that. That means in order for them to, this is why addiction programs in our third dimensional reality don't work. Yeah. They really mostly don't work because they're not pulling that stuff out. And I mean, I remember once having this conversation with this guy, he was having a client who I walked into their house to pick him up, and the house was so fumigated with cigarettes. And I was like, you realize she has a suicide program. And he got so offended by that because I triggered something in him. So I realized that's an offensive statement. You can only have this kind of a conversation with people who are really ready to look at these truths. Yes. They're very dark. They're not like, oh, let's just be happy. Because this is the other state of reality on planet Earth, the third dimensional reality. Even those awakening in the second wave, many second wavers just want, let's just be happy.
Yeah, just love and light.
And it's another form of denial. Right. Which denial is its own entanglement and, even law of attraction stuff. It's just that law of attraction movement drives me insane
Me
because
too.
it's a dead end road.
Right.
It'll just encapsulate you in a fourth dimensional realm. You're stuck in 4D. You
Yeah.
can never really anchor in 5D if you're just law of attraction.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to be focused on negative stuff. All you have to do is be willing to face it and say, oh, let's get rid of it. It doesn't serve us anymore. Let's claim the gifts, because ultimately it is all about happiness. It is all about fulfillment.
That's right.
But if you're unwilling to look at the shadow aspects,
yeah,
I know you know that. I know your community.
Well, the community does, but I'd like to give an example. Being able to notice that dense dark, whatever it might be in your life, and then being able to use that compassion for even the darkest of the dark is incredibly activating. It opens up so much more of what we are. And thank you for mentioning the law of attraction stuff. My community knows how challenging I feel that whole thing is, and sort of a brainwash in general.
Yeah.
But they know the truth. They know that it's a whole lot more involved in all realms, and it's an incredibly galactic process to be able to bring in what we need in order to get what we need to get done here. So thank you for mentioning it. Yeah.
I once had Abraham, the collective of Abraham, come to me because I was like listening to one of the, Abraham Hicks videos, and I love them. I'm great. They've done so much for humanity. So it's not to at all say that stuff isn't real and valid, because it is. It's just like sort of you're only getting half, And so I was like arguing in my mind with Abraham, like really just blasting them, like angry, upset, because I was like, why aren't they talking about this? Why aren't they explaining this? Like they're betraying humanity by not sharing it. Like I was frustrated, right? And that's how I get a lot of my information. I'm struggling with the non-physical realm of what's not right. It's like I don't mean, I'm going through this awakening too. And I had the whole collective of Abraham come to me. It was amazing. And they said, we had, because of the point in time and space where we were able to come into this reality, we had to make certain agreements. Mm-hmm. There was a dark force controlling your reality. Yeah. And we were only permitted to offer a certain amount of information that would only get people so far. But we knew we had to choose that information that would reach the most number of masses, that would be the most agreeable to them, to get them on board. And we knew that would get them to seek more. And we knew that there would be, at future points in time, other beings who could take the torch, so to speak. Like you, they said. And I was like, I made peace in that moment. I really got it. Like they had to make accommodation to get in.
Right. So this is actually a very wise way to approach information in general.
Yeah.
To say, hey, it's a facet. It's not the whole picture. No one has the whole picture.
Yes.
And being able to discern for ourselves in our embodiments, what's the next piece of info that we need to unlock from there. Mm-hmm. And so for people who are on their journey, continuing to gather more info to discern that, and to feel when it's time to be done with it too. Yes. To be conscious of how your body says. Your DNA will tell you, all right, you need to move on from this. It's going to dead end in your life. It's like, suddenly it's like, wow, that door's shut. Now where do I go? That's good. That means that it's time for you to go be looking for the next piece that's going to be led by your own embodiment.
Yes. Yes.
Brilliant. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff.
It is great stuff. Hey, Lori, would you like to take some questions?
I would also, we didn't really get to talk too much about animals.
Let's talk about animals, and I have a really wild question for you.
Okay. I love questions.
Yesterday, my husband and I were reading, we always keep up to date on what's going on, especially with DNA. And I read a very disturbing article. Yesterday, it was shown that scientists in China are splicing human intelligence DNA into macaque monkeys
Mm.
to see if they can make them smarter.
Mm.
And this really bothered me. Because it's like, didn't you guys watch Planet of the Apes? I mean, first off, sometimes with these scientists, I'm like, didn't you guys watch any sci-fi? Don't you know what's gonna? Like, some of that sci-fi is straight up like truth. But to me, I think we want to really honor the animals and their choices. That's not an honoring of that for sure. But it leads me to ask you, what importance does the animal kingdom play in their sovereignty, in our own ascension, and the Earth's ascension and their ascension? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's I know they're doing all kinds of stuff to the animals. I mean, Bigfoot is a potential, DNA experiment. All of
Sure.
Bigfoot, that whole thing is it.
Yeah, an ancient one, right? I mean, the scientific name is Gigantopithecus. And I love Bigfoot very much. But the Gigantopithecus is one example, and we're finding more, actually. They just found a new hominid species in the Philippines that had the ability to climb trees while still also walk upright and even make fire. I mean, really incredible examples all over the world of DNA experiments in order to get to this Homo sapien embodiment. And many of those experiments haven't gone anywhere. Gigantopithecus is a good example.
So yeah. So let's say this. So the people who are participating and engaged in those experiments are still in a third dimensional realm. They don't know that they don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And so our hope, desire, and intention is that everybody wakes up out of this third dimensional realm, ideally, without fractaling off onto some other timeline where those kinds of behaviors perpetuate. So what happens when we bring our consciousness out of a timeline is it collapses into a wave. It becomes non-physical. It exists, but not in a physical way. Just the energy of it exists. So the people and the beings in that experience no longer have to perpetuate that experience. For example, animals no longer need to be tortured and suffering like that. However, part of the third dimensional realm, their job is to learn sentience. Their job is to learn free will. Their job is to learn all kinds of things that they have to learn. And they're still perpetuating the need to learn something. In 5D, we don't learn anymore. It's not about learning. We do, but it's choosing. We choose the expansion of our consciousness.
Yeah.
We choose experiences. We choose something new and different that's more enjoyable.
Yeah.
We learn whatever we want to learn by accessing intelligence from the quantum field or from the divine, but they don't know that yet. So the animal's role is to help humans learn. The animal's role is to teach humans these kinds of, and so much more, but overall teaching these kinds of concepts. So if an animal, in a sense, by sacred contract and agreement, is choosing to participate, even if the animal is doing that from an unconscious, because the animal in that cage, for example, or in that experiment might be saying, get me out of here, I want out, this sucks, I didn't know what I signed up for, which we've done. I know I've done that. Get me the fuck out of this reality.
I didn't read the fine print.
Right. I mean, if that's going on, that means there's work for us to do as light workers to clear whatever exists out of that realm, but we have to do it from a place of expanded consciousness. Nonetheless, animals are here to help humans, and animals are serving humanity from a higher consciousness to assist us through this awakening process, to make new choices and to evolve. And if that route of they've been doing this for, so long. I mean, that goes back to the birth of humanity, the Atlantis. That's part of why Atlantis fell. Yeah. They were tinkering with the DNA. That's part of why even the so-called negative aliens who are our ancestors, those a lot of them sort of abandoned the projects here because things just went so awry.
Right.
With all of the genetic manipulations.
Right.
And so that's why these more benevolent our benevolent star families are now giving us a lot of the codes. A lot of the codes I get are from, when you ask me, where do they come from? A lot of they're coming from my connection with my star family races.
Yeah.
And as I've opened more of that up, I'm able to access more star families who say, this, we want to give you this. Yeah. Implant this in yourself, Lori. I implant things in myself from them a lot of times, awaken them from myself. They tell me what it is, translating it, and then a month or two later, I'm giving it to others through my calls. So that's why they're still working with us in our DNA, because they're trying to help us to evolve out of that old energetic of where it's all been manipulated.
Absolutely.
So, but anyway, to come back to the animals, you know, when they have three primary missions, which is to heal their humans or to heal some part of Earth, like the whales and dolphins. We know they're healing the waters.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And elephants are holding records. That's why they have such a big brain. They hold the true history of the Earth realm. Whales hold the true history of the water realm. All animals serve some greater purpose, either to teach or to heal, or both. They're humans that they're with, or else their area of the earth where they live. Mm-hmm. Or even, for example, the area of that country or that nation, they may take on stuff for that country. So they're teaching, they're healing. And then, of course, they're also having an experience, just like we are. They're beings that are aspects of source, just like we are, who chose particular experiences.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah.
And I like to point out, too, that some of the things I've noticed about animals, first off, that they don't have any ego. They don't have in their DNA some of those really extra tricky viruses, perhaps computer viruses programmed in to create all this trauma and density. And I like to point out, you know, humans are the only ones that walk around worrying about death. Animals don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have.
By the way, those are death and dying implants.
Yeah, exactly. And
they're implanted.
Yeah, and my animals, they're not thinking about that. They're in the moment. They're where all the power and the beauty is, in the moment, and it's really precious. Yeah. And when a human being continues to move density, removing programs, bringing in more light, that animal also will do that too. They'll mirror that light and they'll help expand it.
Yes.
And that's why when we are paired with these beautiful beings, even if it's for a short time, that they themselves are magnifiers of light. And I just absolutely love that. I love that so much, and surround myself with a whole farm full of animals. Just for that.
I mean, animals are the ultimate empaths.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're overly in third dimensional reality, our primary tool that we use in 3D is the left analytical brain, right? But animals have a very perfect balance. They tend to use more of their right, but as they're ascending, they're getting a much easier time of having a balance between left, right, and heart center.
Yeah.
So they don't have to analyze something, but they can know, oh, that's that. This is how it feels. This is awareness.
Yeah.
So it's not like they don't have to analyze it. They don't have to figure it out. They don't get in these. This is another thing that's in the DNA is what we call looping patterns.
Mm-hmm.
A looping pattern is, there's all kinds of different kinds of looping patterns, but one of them is where you keep analyzing something over and over and over again. Keep thinking about trying to figure it out, and eventually you realize with a looping pattern you can't figure your way out of it.
Now you can only feel your way out.
Right. It's part of what ignites the need for other tools, but the animals have more of that. So they're the ultimate empaths. They feel something, they sense something, and they know it. And there's no questioning or doubting or wondering or.
That's right. And they mirror our own issues back to us every single time. If you see something going on with your animal, it has to do with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of people really don't even understand that part. And I think it's even interesting when people sort of say things like, well, I got him and he already had that. Our dog have already had that issue. It's like, it's still a vibrational match and a sacred contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole, I don't do lost animal cases anymore, just mostly because I just don't have, it's not the highest and best use of my time and energy anymore.
Right.
It's not the highest and best way for me to be of service, but I've done a lot of lost animal cases in the past. I used to do them, and I taught a whole class on it too. You know, how to locate lost animals for animal communicators. And I just know animals get lost for the same kinds of reasons too. So the reason animals in the third dimensional realm are often so hard to find is because there's spiritual reasons underlying why the animal got lost. And those need to be addressed, but in order for the animal to even be found. But most people don't get that. They lose their animal. They're disconnected from their spiritual connection in a sense. You're never really disconnected, of course, but they're operating so much in 3D. And the animals sometimes like, well, I can't even help this person wake up, so let me get lost and get their attention this way, or trigger them to become more conscious in some way, or there's some kind of agreement in that way. And if a person's so stuck in 3D and they don't get it, a lot of times they don't even get the animal back.
Right. Well, and I can attest to having I say just, but in November, my dog suddenly dying. And that opened up a huge new aspect of my own awakening and attachment and non-attachment, among other things. And it's still unfolding. So it doesn't stop, and she's never left, but her work continues, and that's something that is such a precious gift she gave me, my Phoebe. But she also opened the door for Chloe. And in many ways, Chloe's a better match for our family. And I think that there's so much there. So we don't want to underestimate the power of the animal kingdom, and how important it is for us to be able to work with that animal kingdom. So I think that's something really precious. Thank you, Lori.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the big things, I think, even with animals, is just in my journey, that's kind of where it started for me. Was I was, working in corporate America, and I was really miserable. I was just 20 years of living that kind of slave life of working for somebody behind a desk, going in, wasn't ever getting enough sleep. I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I was drinking 2 pots of coffee a day. I was like 40 or 50 pounds overweight. I was never getting enough sleep. Hair was falling out of my head. My thyroid was off, completely off balance. I was miserable, and I was overly spending. At that peak, I had something like $150,000 in credit card debt on multiple credit cards. And what happened was I was going to doctors, and they were just pumping me up on pharmaceutical drugs. Like, that was their solution. And this was like before pharmaceutical drugs became, the rage and the craze. And back then it was like, don't tell anyone you're on antidepressants.
Oh, yeah.
Now there's I saw a commercial that said, oh, I got to stay on my old antidepressant, and now I get to take my new one. Like, there's literally a commercial that's the woman saying it.
I know, it's so insane.
Ridiculousness. Okay, well, anyway, and I just realized my brother died, and I started getting messages from him. And the big message was like, wake up. Wake up. You're next. You're doing all the same things I was doing. I mean, he was drinking alcohol excessively and drugging excessively. And I knew that my love and my desire was to be of service to animals. And for 20 years, I would go off on these volunteer things around the world, helping animals, and I'd be happy for a month, or, and I'd come home and live my life miserable. And I was like, this is it. I quit everything. I became a dog trainer. And when I became a dog trainer, and I just did that one thing to just decide to be happy, regardless of the consequences, which I'm not telling everyone to do it that way, but that was the thing. I started hearing the animals. I just started hearing them, and they would say, I'm going to teach you. I'll teach you. I
love it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know what I was hearing at first. I thought I was crazy too. Like, I'm seeing my dead brother. I'm getting from the animals. And and I was being told, you don't need those drugs. You don't need that cigarette. You don't. And then I started telling my then husband this stuff, and he would be like, you're freaking crazy. I'm divorcing you.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He just couldn't handle the idea that I could get healthy, that I thought I could do it without pharmaceutical drugs. He didn't even believe that it was possible for me to quit smoking. I mean, these were like the beliefs that I was dealing with.
Wow.
Those things weren't even possible at that time.
Yeah.
The audacity that you could think you could quit your 6-figure job for, to become a dog trainer. Like, I had to overcome all that stuff. But the irony is that as soon as I righted my course, within 2 years, all of it was gone. The credit card debt, all of it, miraculous, amazing.
Amazing.
Gone. I never smoked again. That was gone within the first year. I gave up drinking alcohol. In fact, I had my first beers in 10 years. Well, I'm exaggerating, but just last February at the Conscious Life Expo, just for the fun of it, okay, let me do this again. It's fun. No big deal. But I don't need it. I would never want it. I don't even want it. Right. My body, my life state is not part of my life anymore. None of those things, they were all gone.
Yeah.
And this is all just from the love for animals.
Wow.
My desire to be of service to animals.
Oh, it's amazing.
Action to follow my passion.
Wow. What a blessing.
And that was inspired. I just say that was that whole Louise Hay movement. What was I reading? Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer.
For sure.
They really did help.
Pre-wave absolutely foundationally helped. Absolutely. Yeah. I got into energy healing, the concept of it, by reading Deepak Chopra when I was 12. Right. So, but I was in the 90s. Yeah. When I was 12.
Right. Well, you're so advanced. Yeah, you're so advanced.
Well, I came in with a lot of readiness. I just kind of came in knowing, right? And my whole family, even to this day, they're always like, how the heck are you related to us?
Many of what I perceive my closest friends, and I know our friendship is relatively new, and yet I feel like you're one of my closest friends. My closest friends are people, younger women who are so advanced, like you, for your age, so progressed. And I'm just in awe of, it's like you're.
I'm in awe too. And, I when we first started talking as friends, and I'd like to share this with everyone, but I remember, thanking you, and I thank you again for being the generation that opened doors so that I could do this.
Yeah.
And, for being, and everyone on the call, anyone older than 36.
It's all a partnership. Everybody's passing the baton,
People say, well, thank you for your work. I said, no. Thank you so much for opening the door so that I could do this work without any shame, without any secrecy, without any fear.
I would say that was the biggest thing, probably that maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Just in this conversation, it's coming up, but that point of time where I came in, I really did face so many people calling me crazy and judging me. I remember my father, when I went to Maui, was like, you're crazy. You're insane. I want you to you got to get on the phone with the doctor. I'm going to call a doctor. And just have to go through that whole, now to me, I don't see that at all anymore in my world, even with the next generation. Like, every yoga person is into chakras and that's just out there. It's just, that's the new normal. That's, so
I was able to step into a new normal, and I didn't have to spiritually struggle to be heard.
Right.
Even in a very highly religious family, they all knew I was really psychic, and they didn't think it was a bad thing. Mm-hmm. In fact, they, in a way, my mother was my first teacher. She was the one who'd take me places and say, what do you see? Mm-hmm. We would never move into a house until I had seen it first, and done a whole reading on it and stuff, right?
Because I think you have a lot more crystal in you. Like for me, my indigo my indigo seed, I call myself a braided seed.
Mm.
And what I mean by braided is like my star being self has braided in with my human history.
Yes. Yes.
So I have a really good, pure, very solid, strong connection with myself as a star being, but I also have a very good, very solid
God, I
connection
love
with
it.
my human story
Yeah.
and my history. And my knowing about myself through that braided starseed is that I'm indigo and I'm crystal, and I also have an angelic presence, like really so much connection with the angelics,
Mm-hmm.
the angelic realms. And in that's my story. But I think you have a lot more pure crystallized self, and rainbow self, which they're all different versions, and
Yeah.
there's no better or worse necessarily, but that crystal is, you're just so clear. You're just so,
I like being clear.
yeah, yeah,
I surround myself in lots of quartz.
yeah. I mean, I feel like I have such a crystal connection too. Like I lead a journey every year to Arkansas where we go
Oh, yeah.
pull crystals out of the earth. Oh, I should show you guys, since this is such a casual, informal. I
Yeah.
should show you this crystal I pulled. Want to see it?
Oh, yeah, please.
Right out of the earth. And
Cool. Oh, yeah,
we
you
go
had a crazy experience with that, I remember.
we go digging for crystals. Here it is. This is this one. Look at this.
Wow.
That
Look at that.
pulled this crystal right out of the earth. And I mean, I have crystals all over my house. I don't know if you can see some of those, but
I mean,
anyway,
millions of years old.
I'm a crystal addict, right?
Yeah.
And this one also I got out of the earth.
Oh, my goodness.
Incredible.
Look
In
at
Arkansas.
Wow.
So, I mean, these are, you don't get tons of these like this. But anyway, because we go to private digs.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we work with these crystals. We work with the grid. You understand the crystal grid?
Yes.
And you understand that the crystals are timekeepers,
Yes.
gatekeepers, and also, they're basically storing up information from our future star family races. So when we're able to connect with these crystals, and we can access, different frequencies of consciousness, like these ridges here are just like on a tree, that the tree has information, and so does the crystal. So when you start working with the intelligence of these crystals, all kinds of information and energy and consciousness becomes available to you. So anyway, this is what we do in Arkansas. I teach everyone how to do this. We teach healing with the crystals and how to work with them, and how to connect with them and use them for yourself, and how to work with them grid lines, because you see in 3D, in the third dimensional realm, there's a 5G grid now, which is very, as we know, harmful and detrimental. But in 5D, you have a 5D grid, which is a crystalline grid, and you have to really know how to anchor into that and how to work with it and how to use it and make that your grid, because otherwise this other one is just...
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that crystalline grid transmutes so much energy. And for those of you here listening to us who are collective empaths being able to constantly tap into the collective, that's incredibly valuable, so that you're not bombarded or overwhelmed by what the evolution of the collective it feels like. You want to be utilizing that grounding, crystalline, very fractal grid that's definitely 5D. And the crystals in 3D, they're showing us what that's like in 3D, what it looks like when we're holding one in our hand. There's all that 5D consciousness really embodied by that intelligent crystal. It doesn't stop growing. It doesn't stop vibrating. It's intelligent. And that's really, and everyone has the ability to communicate to them. We all do. It's our human right.
Yes. And the other thing is, I mean, I do think there's a degree of learning, that's why it's so good to put yourself in sacred community and sacred tribe. And that's part of why I bring people to Arkansas, was we get so close and intimate. We cook our dinners together. We're hanging out. We're in these beautiful houses in the middle of a natural forest, but they're very high-end upscale housing right on the lake. We swim in the lake that's covered in crystals. We, working with them, we're interacting with them, we're playing together, we're healing together. And I think that's one of the things that brings you into attunement. It attunes you to it, because just what a lot of humans are doing right now, which is not a bad way, it's a limited, it's not the whole picture, is we learn through the internet, but we still need to get in sacred community. This is a great example of sacred community, because we're here in a very open, casual, honest format. But if you're just like listening to YouTube videos, or just, that alone is not enough to just left brain it. And you have to really get in there and do the inner work. You can't do spiritual bypassing right now and just learn about it through the left brain. So that's why I love like retreats and community like this, where you're really connecting, because you learn this stuff in a whole new way. And the only other thing I just want to say about crystals, and then I know we were going to take questions, is they also are holding patterns of perfect sacred geometry, right?
Yes.
So our bodies that are in the third dimensional realm are based in these basic hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon-based bodies are being transformed into crystalline-based bodies. So these crystals are way more important than we even realize. That's all I can say for our evolution.
Seriously, I agree. I think that'll unfold more and more. And a lot of the ancient knowledge that's available in the real internet, I like to call the source field, the real internet. And and I always say, I work in the library of the real internet, but now at this point I embody the library. So I don't work there anymore. I just access what's available already. And again, that's something all of us have the ability to do. But I do agree that as we move forward into this permanent golden age, that the crystals will be able to come take their place at the table as such an integral part of that. And it's going to be amazing, because it's all going to be really new, with old, beautiful, ancient concepts remembered by our own DNA being open to it. And we'll see how that unfolds, but it'll be a very different way of living for sure. I'm excited to witness that.
Yes.
Let's see who has some things to say here. All right, so lots and lots of questions here, and scrolling to the top. Okay. So we have Nancy says she would like to. She says, I hear so many people talk about the 12 strands of DNA being activated at this time. I've never really felt the truth of that. It doesn't feel right. Do you know if they are talking about a more multidimensional DNA, although DNA isn't just physical in the 3D? Could what these other teachers are talking about be a 12-dimensional thing? And I have my opinion on that, but please, Lori, share us what your opinion is about what is this whole 12-strand thing all about exactly? How come we don't necessarily see 12 actual strands when we're looking at DNA with a 3D microscope?
Yeah. Okay. I would love to hear your opinion too, but this is when I hear someone say that they activated all 12 strands, I think you have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
The moment they say that, I think
this is why I like you.
I may be incorrect. However, my brain immediately dismisses them on that topic area.
Sure.
It doesn't dismiss them as a human being, just that, because I think they don't know what they're talking about and they've been fed a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
If you have first of all, when I was first going through this stuff in Maui, that was only the first 2 years. I used to almost every day, I was meditating every day. I was working with this incredible healer teacher. I had my Reiki master done there for the first time. I got my Reiki master. I didn't know anything that I know now. Nothing. I wasn't doing anything yet, but this is what my body would do every single night.
Yeah,
I couldn't handle, I call it floppy fish syndrome. I'm being over dramatic, but that's literally what would happen.
I agree. Yeah, yeah, sure.
I could not handle the energy. My body couldn't handle it. And even though I thought it was weird, it felt good. So I was never worried about it.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was like, I didn't think there was anything wrong. I knew I was working with energy. It's floppy fish syndrome. Your body can't handle it. So the idea that you could just activate all 12 strands all at once,
Yeah.
you
Ta-da!
can't handle it. I mean, I hadn't even done any DNA in activations when I was living in Maui during that time. And I thought I was going crazy. I was in my mind thinking everything that was changing, I was going crazy. I couldn't understand, but I knew I wasn't crazy. But I couldn't make sense of anything. Everything was being turned upside down because I was coming online as a conscious being. An old version of me was stepping out. A new version of my consciousness was stepping in. It wasn't an overnight process. There's no way that 12 strands can be activated even in a year. No way, in my opinion.
No,
I
definitely
don't even
not.
think, I don't even really believe, like I ask, a lot of times I'll ask my own higher consciousness, how much of my DNA is activated? Because I know I've been doing so much. I know if you were going to do comparison, not that that's necessary, but I know that I have more than the majority of human beings on planet Earth. Let's just say, if we're going to do
Because you've been focusing on it.
yeah. And I don't even think I've got all that activated. I just don't. And I don't, and the other thing that's really important to understand is it's not linear.
No, it's not.
So you could have some codes and things activated in this strand, some codes activated in that strand, but the whole strand, is it fully activated? I mean, it's not. That's not what I understand. You don't have it all activated, all perfect, all pure, all 12 strands. There's just so much. And we also know that if you take the 12 strands of DNA, string them together and link them. Did you say this to me? I think you did. They go around the earth multiple times. Was that
That's
you?
right. They do.
Yeah. And I
No,
was
that
like,
wasn't me, but yes, I agree.
so you can't have all that activated all at once.
No, and everybody's
years,
different.
12 to 15 years now, I don't believe I
Right.
have it all activated. And I do absolutely have a knowing within me that at some point humans will be able to completely teletransport effortlessly,
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my teachers is already doing it. He goes in a closed room, closes the door. Nobody knows him. Nobody sees him. One moment he's in Russia. The next moment he's in here. He does it. And I have another teacher that I was studying with in Maui. Rarely brings us. It's very hard to get with him. But when you can get with him, we've been in a room like a ballroom size in a hotel. And we are working on projecting ourselves from one physical place in the room to the other end of the room, like flying, but not flying. It's projection. Okay, this is in the future of humanity. Why am I saying this? Because if you have all your strands activated, this will be effortless.
Right.
Because it's in there. But I
is.
haven't done it yet myself. Therefore, I have to assume that not all my DNA is activated. And that's why I think it's crazy when someone says that.
Well, and I also, I want to point out that in the 3D, when we look at DNA with our microscopes, and we're getting better at it, but you're only going to see 2 strands because those are the 2 that are in the 3D.
Yes.
And that there's many, 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 many more than just 12. And I'd like to point out that, how do we know that? Well, first off, remember at the beginning when we talked about how DNA is changed by frequency and light. Well, frequency and light are wavelengths. So if you were to put the rainbow wavelength in front of you, how many wavelengths create a rainbow? And furthermore, can't you see too that there's wavelengths beyond that rainbow? We know that. Much of that we can't see with our physical body. The wavelengths of what creates this universe are far beyond just our own perceptions from the body. We know that to be true. That's what being psychic and being a full empath intuitive is all about. You're perceiving beyond just the 3D. You're perceiving the many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wavelengths that create this universe. And those wavelengths are very much part of other dimensions. And people know through my work that I'm slowly moving away from the word dimension. And instead now I'm saying qualities of light. These are qualities of light we're talking about. In the 5th dimension, there's a whole nother quality of light there. In the 6th dimension, 7th dimension, it's qualities of light. There's no glass wall between these dimensions. It's just like the rainbow. If you're looking at the rainbow, there's going to be many different qualities of light. And, you know, if you're in the red wavelength, well, that could be technically a dimension, the red wavelength dimension, perhaps, or whatnot. So with that, we're only seeing 2 aspects in the physical that show up and have those specific capabilities to help replicate the human body. That's those 2 strands job, is the replication and the maintenance of ancient history. And all those gifts from our lineage, right? Yeah. What is beyond that? What is beyond that is the multidimensional self and the multidimensional aspects of our embodiment, the many layers of who we are. We're not just one body or one soul in one body. No, there's lots and lots and lots of layers that create us and our strand of consciousness that comes from source. And so when people talk about 12 strands, I'm dismissive because I know that there's much more than just 12. And furthermore, that the continued clearing of any density that keeps us from accessing all these different gifts, these different abilities to access information and light, well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cleaning up all the density and then being able to then access layers of light in which information, gifts, abilities, knowing, connection, all of that is there. It's accessible then. So when someone does the work, when they're clearing, and they're replacing and they're healing and they're working with others to help them, because we can't see our own poster very well when you got your nose up against it. You know, not even me. I always tell people, hey, I need help. Please, I need help. Like, I can't do this alone. We all need to acknowledge that we're all here to help one another in that aspect. But the fact is that once you're able to keep shifting these pieces out of the way, you'll be able to access deeper, more profound experiences that are physical too. And people have heard me talk about it when I recognized that I was making a choice to embody another layer of light, another level of light, a quality of light. It changed the way that I was experiencing my 3D life. And it was incredible. And it's a measurable thing. So that, to me, is what we're really talking about here. We're talking about the fact that we are multidimensional beings and that we're grounding these experiences in the 3D, but the 3D piece, the 2-strand DNA we see in the microscope, is a small, teeny, tiny portion of what is the truth.
Yes. And also one other, I love everything he said. I was really enjoying that. And I like what you said so much about the dimensions too, because I talk about dimensions all the time, actually.
Yeah, of course.
It's part, because I think that's the bulk of just people are just waking up to this concept.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I would also expand dimensions to be just frequencies of consciousness.
Yes.
Frequencies of ranges of frequencies of
Love
consciousness.
It. Frequencies, ranges of light and consciousness.
Yes. But the other thing, just on the DNA for Nancy, since Nancy was what catalyzed this amazing conversation on this part, is just to say that 3D microscopes are not capable of seeing even beyond the first 12 strands. They don't even know that's there. Yeah. And that absolutely will. If 4 more letters were found in the DNA after 12 to 15 years of just my own activations that I know of, and I don't know what other people were doing or what, then there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that it will not be long before science somehow develops equipment and acknowledges that there are more than 12 strands. But right now, they cannot see
Absolutely.
that. They
Well,
don't.
and we know as spiritual scientists, because that's what we all are here, that our greatest tool has already been able to perceive this. Our greatest tool is our body. And our body is the tool. This is the tool. we already know it. It's already there. And that's why I love anthropology in particular, because I get to share with people, you're not missing out on the tools. You are the tool. You're the tool of perception. Your body is. And that's where we as souls get to advance our knowledge and wisdom by using these bodies in that way. And that means that anecdotal, and I hate that word especially, I don't like that word, because in science they say they like to use that word as a dismissal. And I say that is not true. Your individual experience is absolutely valid and key to the full experience of humanity, and that each of our experiences are not to be dismissed. They're part of exactly how we're going to perceive more of reality. And so that's the key. It's to change our mindset and not to allow the 3D science community to continue to dismiss each individual's experience as they're experimenting on the planet with their bodies.
I noticed also a question that Susie asked, just because it's in front of my face, and I really like it. Says, so as we move out into more and more levels and layers of DNA, 144, 244, et cetera, are we moving into more of the collective aspects of ourselves? And what I would say is, that's just a really smart question. I love that question. And what I would say is we're moving more into oneness with all that is.
Yeah.
So unity with one another, unity with the divine, and oneness as all that is.
Yeah. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading. So Alan wanted to know about activating layers or getting in contact with different layers. He's in particular interested in, how do we get to connect with those parts of ourselves that are of the star lineages, the starseed parts of us?
Yeah. Well, let me say this. One of the biggest things I know is one of the most important aspects of getting in touch with all that DNA is not having any particular attachment. In other words, wanting of anything in particular.
Yeah.
So I never went into the DNA looking for my star family or anything. All I ever did was like, something started catalyzing in me. I would ask, what is going on here? I would be told over and over again, you'll know when the time comes. And then I started doing these, what I thought was DNA activations within me. And it was a lot of it was being shown to me. I didn't even know at that time. And because it was so pleasurable for me and seemed at that time, without any logic, beneficial to me, I kept doing it. That's where it started for me. It wasn't like I was going after star family, anything. I was pursuing the desire to continue doing something that I was enjoying and seemed beneficial with a kind of, innocence, because I didn't really know. And the more I did it for myself, the more I started realizing it was helping. It was serving. That I had smaller groups of friends I would do it with. I'd be like, let's do this together. I don't know. Want to do it with me? And they'd be like, yeah. That's where it started. So understand, I think when you ask, how do you do it? one of the biggest hooks that people get hooked into, and this is a very linear brain way, is the attachment to what we want and what we expect, the expectation of how it should be, how it should unfold, or what we should get out of it,
Yeah.
or what it's supposed to somehow show us. And that's a kind of a hook that will, it's a sabotage in a way.
Right.
Because it doesn't work that way. So I think you have to go in with a kind of very curious, open mind. But this is what I would say. I personally don't believe that everybody knows how to do this initially. This is why we learn about it. We all have different gifts. I am not a person who draws mandalas and understands mandalas. I am not even a person who studied sacred geometry. If I wanted to be an expert in that, I would go to someone. That's their mission.
Yeah.
I think people should be, if you want to activate your DNA, it happens to be that's one of the things I do, and I think I'm excellent and outstanding at it, but just find someone who you resonate with, who's doing it, who will help you to become, if you want to be an expert at that, learn from an expert. I'm not an expert I don't teach how to meet your divine right partner. That's not my area of expertise. So if I need help in that area, I go to someone who is.
Absolutely.
That's my belief. We all have these abilities. I teach classes on psychic development, not so much anymore, but I did for a long time. Why? Because that's an area I'm an expert at. Mm-hmm. I'm really good at it. I think I'm outstanding. I teach animal communication and telepathy and energy healing because that's my area of expertise. So if you want to learn something and you're not sure, study with someone who calls them knows themselves to be an expert in that area, who you resonate with, and learn it.
Agreed.
It's not an overnight process, that's for sure. It's not something you learn in an hour.
No, and I think it's very vital because there's a lot of folks who've been doing a lot of self-teaching, and you can learn a lot, but there's going to be a point when you will need that expertise to help you get to the next level. And it is very important for all skill sets to be able to meet with people who've mastered things. And the reason is because they've made all the mistakes.
Yeah.
They've made all the mistakes.
Well, also because the thing is, in everyone's DNA, we have what's called an original divine blueprint. So yes. There's an original divine blueprint for all of humanity, and then there's other sub-original divine blueprints within the DNA. You have one original divine blueprint that's unique to you, whoever you are. That's as unique to you as your thumbprint is. Nobody else has it. And within your unique original divine blueprint, and that's one of the things I almost always activate that for my groups when we do them, because every time I do activations, they're always different. They're always based on different codes and codons and whatever's being offered to us. But within your unique original divine blueprint is the plan for your soul's agenda, for your life journey, and that will include whatever it is you're an expert on, your own unique, what you're here to offer. And that is for every individual to discover within ourselves. So even though, yes, we're all psychics and we all have energy centers and we're all healers, everybody has their unique brand of that, their unique, blueprint for it. So you want to discover what's your unique blueprint. That typically you don't really need to, I don't think you always need to study that from someone else as you reveal it from within yourself. But along the journey, I mean, I've had so many amazing teachers. I mean, Louise Hay is a great example. Abraham Hicks, great example. They weren't the be-all, end-all for me. One of my other incredible teachers, I mean, Eli and Gangaji, if you know them.
Of course, yes.
I mean, they were the ones who said, "You're in a dream." I will never forget that moment when I heard that from Gangaji, and I really got it. I'll never forget looking in Eli's eyes and seeing love. I never saw love like that except in the eyes of an animal. In human, the depth of the love that this being had to offer just from the gazing in his eyes. I mean, these are teachers who transformed my life. My awakening could not have happened without them. Absolutely. So the idea that we're to do this on our own is...
No, it's important not to. And, it's funny because on my journey too, I've had very integral teachers, some of them being in academia, many of them, and then having a mystical teacher. And during that whole time, I was a self-taught psychic. But then when I met my mystical teacher, she nailed me. You know, she's like, wow, you have no etiquette.
Right, etiquette. That's a big deal. A lot of
my reaction was, she knows the rules. I don't know the rules. I need to know this lady because she knows the rules. So thankfully, she welcomed me into being someone who could learn from her. So I wanted to bring up a couple of interesting pieces that have come through on this questions part, and for anyone who's got their hand raised, we're only taking questions via the text, and I know we won't be able to get them all, but it's really fascinating. Some people are mentioning some things about how recently there was this study about this astronaut who had an identical twin, and having spent time in space, he came down and they were actually able to show that his DNA had entirely changed. And so his identical twin and him were no longer identical anymore because his DNA had changed because he'd spent so long in space. There's that, and then the other piece is, hey, guess what? We just got our first picture of a real black hole. That's certainly a big deal. I want to make a point here, and thank you, Lori. Lori has a bunch of wonderful gifts for you, by the way.
Only because I just saw that somebody asked, how can we?
Yeah, good.
Yes,
please. And we'll talk about where you can reach Lori so you can work with her. But I'd like to mention that, yes, if we're approaching the DNA issue with this mindset that being exposed to different wavelengths of light and frequency can create changes, then it wouldn't be such a strange thing to imagine that an astronaut, having spent time longer than anyone known, having spent all that time in space, would come back to very literally physically changed person. That's not surprising at all. Why? Well, just like, this black hole thing is very important, well, there's a reason. Because he was exposed to different wavelengths of light and frequency while being outside the Earth's atmosphere. And we know about many different beings' histories, including the gray aliens, for example. The gray aliens were deeply changed by their long time in space. They didn't originally look the way they do. They actually turned out to look that way because they were in space for so long. And that's really a key piece. It wouldn't be surprising then if we were to approach that astronaut story in this way. And furthermore, these wavelengths of energy, they're available to us from all aspects of our reality, from the galaxy itself, from every single star that you see, from every planet you see in the sky, from every black hole, from every galaxy. There are different wavelengths of light and frequency that are available. There are wavelengths of light and frequency that come from Gaia that change every day. There's wavelengths of light and frequency that come from our pets, from the people around us, from the food that we eat, from the places that we go. Every single one of these aspects is changing our DNA. So it is not surprising. In fact, if you're going to do a DNA test on me or Lori, before we were going to do some special activation work for a group or something like that, and you were to test the whole group, and then you'd test us again afterwards, you'd find changes, measurable changes. And so
they're studying the wrong DNA. Of course, I won't really give my DNA to any scientist.
No, you'd never get mine either.
I haven't been to a doctor, nor have I needed a doctor.
No, there's not been a need either on my end. I think that, though, to receive healing is certainly something I've had to learn recently to be open to it, because I never put myself in a position to receive I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I'm the one who was giving all the time.
Mm.
So I think, when we receive healing, when we're open to receive light from another person, that's beautiful. That's DNA changing. It's life changing. It's transformative. So that gives us a good
I just want to
perspective.
say, I cannot oversay how important that is. This past week, we had, I am into astrology. I understand that when you start moving to a certain point in consciousness, you can transcend the astrological influences. However, in the physical world, the physical reality, there are real planets, and they have roles and missions and purposes too, and they have an effect on us. And astrology has been such a huge tool for me in my lifetime. Plus, I just know many lifetimes I've spent, like, in monasteries and places like that where we studied astronomy. But in any case, where I was going with that was just last week, the planet Jupiter this past couple days stopped, and it's in my first house of Sagittarius, and went retrograde. And that day was so hard for me personally. I was just, my mind, my emotions, like it was just, and I always know whenever a planet goes direct or stations and moves forward, and they don't physically move, they just, the spin and the axis, all that stuff
Right.
shifts.
The language of
Most
orbits.
days, even when I don't know they're happening, I will sometimes check, and I can see, that's why I had such a bad, difficult day, like energetically. It was a really tough day. So I have a healer that I work with who I love, and because she knows me and I know her, and we're friends, and she worked with me that very next day. The change was so dramatic. And this is what my point is I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to work with healers. The healers, I mean, I'm a healer. I know you're a healer. Many of us on this call are healers. That word healer is sometimes, misaligned or slandered or whatever. Healer, whatever, an energy worker, whatever word you want to use. It's someone who shifts the energetics. And if they're really good, it's like night and day between difficult. People don't realize how powerful it is. And when I work on my family, because I'm observing, they don't know the difference. But like I worked on my brother over the he was having some really tough times. He's a Capricorn sun. He's got Saturn and Pluto in his first house, having a really hard time. I did some work on him, and he went like from this to this in almost like a week of, it was more than a week because I was working on him for a long time, but he suddenly, everything shifted for him. So dramatic. It's what I'm saying is he wasn't aware really. I could only work within what I was able to do with his consent remotely. Mm-hmm. We don't realize how incredibly powerful it is. And if you don't have a healer that you're working with on one-on-one privately, or at least in groups. And the other thing I want to say is, we do this work. People don't always realize I have struggled through a lot of stuff, a lot of pain, a lot of emotional pain and grief and turmoil, financial challenges of my own to be able to do this work. And yes, I've been divinely supported in amazing, amazing ways, but it's almost not fair to expect it all for free. Fair isn't the right word. I know myself, I've been going through my own evolution where I know our future is going to involve at some point in the future where we're no longer using a monetary form of exchange,
right?
Where we just acknowledge energy exchange, fair energy exchanges, not where we measure dollar for dollar, penny for penny, but where we understand those who give to me, I give to.
Infinite value.
And yes, and those where I receive, I nurture back, and where I'm nurtured, I nurture. But I do this because I love it. We're having this conversation because we love and enjoy one another. You're not paying me financially to share this. I'm not paying you financially to have me in your community. I shared it with my community. There is a fair energy exchange here. Yeah. But I personally am so tired of the free, because it's contrary to where we're going.
Yeah.
Even though everything will be non-financial, when someone doesn't financially compensate me, I do start to feel like this is just not okay anymore. This free stuff.
Right.
Spiritual community is blocking the evolution of humanity in some ways, because we must acknowledge fair and equal reciprocity.
Absolutely.
And energy.
Well, I like to point out, for those of you who do this stuff for free, that the karmic debt falls on the head of your clients.
Yes. When people ask me for something free, I say I don't do free. It's one thing I will give a free gifts. You can see on the sidebar, I give free gifts. Why? Because people deserve to try. They don't know you.
Right,
so
they're getting to know you.
Okay, yep. That's fine. They get a right to sample it out. I want them to sample, and I want them to benefit, and I want to share all that I have. So I don't have the slightest problem with offering something as a gift. It's when people start doing everything for free, they want it all for free, they're nitpicking or not fairly compensating or trying to get more out of you, sucking, it's like I've gone through a lot of that in this lifetime.
Codependency creation, yeah.
Starts feeling really bad. And I find myself sometimes saying, if that's that kind of client in my community, they're welcome. I'm not, but that becomes detrimental to the work. And harmful.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to be very clear to all of our clients as healers that we don't do these things for free, because it will hurt you. It'll hurt I say this to my clients, it will hurt you to have karmic debt. And there's a lot that we can do to make sure that there's ways that we can compensate one another. And so, Lori and I are trying to show, what does this 5D energetic look like? We're not codependent on one another. I'm even moving away from the idea of co-creation. Instead, it's a birthing of a new field, and we then become something new. Lori and I are creating a new energetic platform for all of you here today, and it'll continue to grow. And that energetic platform gives us all something, and then people receive that and they're going to do something with it. But there's a lot of light transmission in this conversation that we've had. Let it unfold in your life. There's a lot you can be doing back for the world by allowing it to unfold. But it's a very important piece there. And, I like Jane's pointing out that I do have a scholarship program, for example, to be part of my online community. Absolutely. Sometimes monetary isn't the thing that's going to help. But you know what I found, Jane, is that most of the people who get scholarships end up volunteering for me in some way. So in some way, shape, or form, they're giving back, even if it's with their time. There's plenty for people to do that isn't money. But either way, it is a matter of respect. It's a matter of...
it really is. I am such a huge tither. I donate and tithe over 10% of everything. And a lot of times it is to spiritual teachers and healers who even I do sessions with. Like my healer that I referred to earlier, I donate to her all the time. She's my friend. I always pay her for a session, but I donate to her.
I donate too. People have no idea how much I actually donate. Yeah. I've actually, over this past year, kept some people from getting evicted from their homes, multiple people, making sure that they could eat. Most people, they don't realize that the monetary expense that I might put on my work, well, that's for those who can pay it. And those who can pay it end up being able to allow me to do charitable things like sessions for dying people who literally can't pay me for a session, or children, or all sorts of different things. So it is very important to transparently, you and I are saying, this is a bigger piece. We're stepping out of the false field of limitation around false value. And into a field of limitless, infinite value. That's where we're going, and it's going to look really different than we're used to. And so we're all trying to practice here and we're all doing it together. There's no book about how to do this.
But here's the higher truth on this too, is that when you understand that source is your provider, doesn't mean you will frivolously
Exactly.
be disrespectful or dishonoring to financial or other forms of wealth, abundance, prosperity exchanges, monetary exchanges. What you will understand is that the laws of the universe, I've learned this from the laws, they govern this realm of exchange of energy.
Yes.
And money is a form of energy, all forms of wealth, and that source is your provider. So ultimately, the tithe that you give out, a tithe or a donation or a payment for an energy or a service, will be returned to you with equal or greater value in the same frequency at which you exchanged it. So in other words, if I make a tithe of, let's just say $100, and I donate that tithe somewhere to something that God has somehow revealed itself to me in however it has, whether it's an animal, like one animal charity that I donate to all the time was through this cow that I met, who communicated to me. I just was so flabbergasted at what this cow taught me and showed me. And I just was, so now I donate to that charity all the time in New York, a farm sanctuary. And when I give that money, it's because the animal taught me so much, and just so much continues to come through that connection with that one cow.
Beautiful. I love it. Wow.
And so this is the way I donate it. That money is like, may all animals be honored.
Yeah.
May all animals be sentient. May this be recognized that all animals are sentient. May this energy go towards the acknowledgement of the sentience of all animals and the expansion of compassion and care for all animals on planet Earth. And may this $100 go out and spread and amplify into the world and radiate out wonderful and joyful things for all animals. That the gift I have received from the animals of consciousness and of healing that has already been bestowed upon me is shared with all of humanity in the highest and best, most benevolent ways. This is how I bless my tithes.
Yeah.
Now, I know that energy then, I can guarantee you, like yesterday, I made a donation of $777. It wasn't one bulk. I dispersed it to different. And the very same day, I'm not kidding about this, I 100% am telling you, I got a check in the mail for $900. I got a payment, someone joining me on the sacred retreat, $1,500. And I got a new client, $1,100. 3 payments the same day, I made a tithe of $777.
Brilliant.
This is how it happens.
And we can bless, like, here's tax forms. I bless my tax forms. I bless my bills with gratitude. Thank you so much for the water that flows out of my taps. Thank you for letting me be able to have the internet and connecting me to people all over the world. I bless my cell phone every day. I bless everything that we're doing, that intention. When we pay a healer and we say, oh, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Or we go in and we're doing that payment for whatever it is that we're receiving. If we have a bad attitude about it, or if we're bitter about it, or we're doubtful about it, then that's the energy, that's the wavelength you're imprinting on what you've just done. And it has repercussions. So what we're sharing with you at this point is something I think all of you understand, but it is something that's really vital that needs to be presented, because that's exactly the mindset shift that's going to launch us into these bigger, more beautiful aspects of this permanent golden age that I'm working real hard to help create. So I have a really great last question here for you, Lori.
Okay.
Kathy asks, is it okay to send loving heart light to others with the intention of healing them? And so this has to do with that free will piece. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I personally would say, depending on your frequency, not with the intention of healing them. Not with that intention, because your intention is to change them then.
Yeah, they have to be open to the
unless they ask, please, will you send me healing energy?
Yes,
then yes, right. But not if they don't ask. And if you want it, I would not advise against like back when I was waking up more, there was all this light worker stuff like send them love, send them love, send them love, send the government love. I personally think love is a strengthening agent. And if you send something that's malevolent love, I don't think that's the best thing to send them. If they have malintentions and they haven't personally, I know I'm going to push some buttons here, learned or evolved, and you send them love. I've seen this in my life. Like when I lived in Maui, I had a terrible landlord. He was horrible. I had my own lessons to learn around that, things to resolve, but nonetheless, he was just this evil, corrupt, bribing landlord who kept harassing me, bullying me. I was afraid of bullies at that time. I had so many bullies. Okay, and my astrology was that Jupiter was going over my Mars, right, in my house of my community. It was a very painful time. I had bullies, and I didn't know how to stand up. I was so afraid of these bullies at that time. And anyway, the point, I kept sending them love, and they would just come at me, bully me more. And I learned if you send someone with malevolent intentions love, that just makes them stronger. So I don't do that.
Yeah.
I send peace.
I like to just say, in my experience, the best way to do anything isn't necessarily to send it.
Yes.
It's to be it.
Totally.
And so if I'm being in that frequency of healing light, and I say, wherever this light needs to go, wherever it has to go, the other side of the universe, wherever this is needed most, I'm open to that. And then,
wherever it serves in the highest and best way.
Wherever it's going to serve the highest good. And so then I don't even necessarily, I'll say if someone says I'm so sick and I'm not doing well, and I'll say I'm holding you. I'm holding you in light. I'm holding you in this quality of light. Whatever light needs to get to you, it will. And so I don't even say that I'm necessarily even sending stuff. I say I'm holding that person. I'm just going to hold them in my field. And if they can receive and they need to receive, then they will. Mm-hmm. If they want to, with their free will and their sovereign will, if they want to receive, they will. So it is a bit of a different take than the whole sending love and light thing. I'm sending you in love and light. At this point now, we're up leveling our consciousness by saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be that love and light, and wherever it needs to go, it'll go. If it comes into my consciousness and requires it from me, then so be it."
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then we blow up our field as big as it can be, and we keep filling it in with light. And watch it transform us and everything that comes into that field willingly. It is a good question. Very good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I just say one other thing on that, since I know we're done. We've gone so long and it's been so much fun. But
it is.
I once for a little while, lived in Santa Monica, and the people on either side of me were loud and 3D, and I was really challenged. I felt like they were very mean, cruel people, and the woman opposite me was loud, and she had screaming kids and screaming dogs, and she was not a nice person. Like, I got myself in a very bad situation for that time. And so I would send them Reiki healing, and eventually their cruelty got me out of that house because I wasn't happy there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt you to do that. But it was not my business to do it. I learned a hard lesson.
Yeah.
Was not my business to do that. I really didn't have a right to do that. My intentions were good. So it didn't hurt me in a sense, but it really wasn't working for me either.
Yeah, it's what I would say, you were leaking energy.
Yeah, I was. I was leaking energy. I was so drained. My dog had fleas at that time because, if your dog gets fleas, it's because you've got vampires around you.
Ah, ding ding.
That's a whole other conversation. Let's talk for another hour.
I know, right? We will. We're going to have you back, and we'll do this again.
I would love it because I just love talking with you, and I love having a community.
Thank you. I do too. And I know everyone has enjoyed it so much. Lori, tell everybody where they can work with you.
Oh yeah. Well, first I put that on the side chat that my website is lorispagna.com, LORISPAGNA. They can get those free, they can get a free DNA activation to
Hmm?
sample it out. It's just a basic generic one, but they'll get to get a sense of it when they go to lorispagna.com/free gifts/DNA. And there's a whole class about it and an activation. They'll love that. Then they can also get a whole class and ebook on the indigo family races and how to know if you're a star seed and how to sort of know the terminology. And if you are, when that stuff's brand new, I just put it up there. That's at lorispagna.com/free gifts/starseed. And then for those of you who are animal lovers, there's some great content and energy healing on working with your animals and communicating with your animals at lorispagna.com/free gifts/animals. Some classes and some healing energy for people and animals.
Yes, and we have someone typing in already who'd listened to it, and they said it's wonderful.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's very rich, juicy stuff. It's not like some of those free gifts out there. It's like you get a downloadable ebook and you look at it and you're like, okay, that was a waste of 10 minutes.
No, and I can attest, working with Lori is certainly no waste of your time. She's an expert in many different aspects, and the reason I wanted to share her beautiful, sweet wisdom with you is because I wanted you to be able to work with someone who resonates the most with you and give you the opportunity to be able to meet her in this way, in this conversational way, so you can see how she and I interact. This is literally how we talk on the phone anyway.
Yeah. Can I say one other thing? Well, since I can do my shameless self-promotion for a moment.
Please.
If people do want to come on the Sacred Crystal Journey or learn more about the crystals, I have a free class coming up to help people know about that and also learn more about the crystals. That's in my newsletter. So if you're in my community, you'll learn about that. But it's on the website too. You can learn more about the Crystal Journey under live events. Plus, under the live events tab at lorispagna.com, that's where you find out about the DNA activations. And those are really affordable because I do them on different portals, as I'm guided, portal stargates, whenever there's significant stargates and portal days. There's definitely one coming up already for August for the Lion's Gate, right? 888, the 88 Lion's Gate. Portal. So you can know about those as well under the live events tab. I'm doing a couple of activations live, one in San Francisco. I'll be there next week. And anyway, that's all under the live events tab at lorispagna.com.
Fabulous. And I know you have a lot of different ways for people to work with you. Someone's asking if you do any animal pet private sessions still, Lori.
Very rarely, almost never.
Because you're moving away. You're like me. We've realized our time can be used better. So we are.
Sometimes someone can get in on a private session, but I will tell you, it's not unheard of. If you write and you really want a private session, but I ask people, please don't write me and ask about private sessions unless you really want to pay a fair energy exchange, because it's not cheap. It's my time, energy, lifetime of expertise. And when my admin has to send emails and stuff, nothing flips my switch more when people waste my time and energy with administrative burden. So that's why I stopped.
Yeah.
That's why I stopped, because I was like, the administrative work is so much time and energy to tell people how to book sessions. And then if they don't do it, it's a waste of my time and energy. And it drives me crazy, pushes my buttons.
Sure.
I don't like wasting my time and energy, and I don't like wasting my administrative time and energy, because I can have my staff people doing great things, helping people. So that's why I don't do privates anymore. It's not that I don't love them. I love working with people. I love working with animals. I just don't love wasting time or energy.
Right, sure. And certainly as you have continued to get more reach, it's impossible to do one-on-ones all the time. Yeah. I mean, I've realized that and had to figure it out for myself, of course, over the past couple of years, that doing one-on-ones all the time, I'm not actually reaching the amount of people that need to and really want to work with me.
But you know what else, Elizabeth? I just want to say there are like coaches out there who
Yes.
charge like $13,000 to $25,000 to work with them,
Yep.
and they're not. I'm not dissing that. It's a 3D, 4D approach because they're waking up to their. But I
Yes.
see some of those things, and I'm like, they're not doing anything to the depth. I'm not dismissing that. Please, I'm not. But I just think the value of what we're offering is so big. It's so huge to be able to go and clear lineage and lifetimes of stuff. And when I do a session, it's coaching. It's not just you. It's your animals. It's your family. It's the whole thing. It's your life, your journey.
The whole
It's
thing.
so rich, so worth so much that for me, I got to the point where I was like, it is not fair to me. I'm not liking charging an hourly fee anymore. And then watching other people charge $25,000 for coaching packages where they're giving a fraction of this. It just doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah.
So I do love working with people. I love that.
We both do. Absolutely. Yeah. That's not the problem.
In all ways that feel good and are of service in the highest and best ways I can. So.
Absolutely. And thank you for being so transparent about it. I think you and I are not alone. And that many of the folks listening are healers themselves.
Yes.
And to be encouraged to branch out and be able to say, you know, what's a waste of time and where am I leaking energy? That self-assessment is really key. And Lori and I do it a lot. We're always self-assessing constantly. All the time. Yeah. It's absolutely very important. Very good.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me. I love you so
I'm
much.
so glad to have you.
I really enjoy this community because I can see the comments, you know, and I just can see your community here is just really high functioning, high consciousness. It's really lovely. I love working with people who are so open and willing to go to
absolutely. Me too. I have to say that my beautiful community here is very savvy. They're very approachable. All of you are beautiful, super smart and capable, and it's just so precious. And I think that the fact that all of you are listening today and being willing to hear us be so transparent about our experiences too, you know, it says a lot about you. It says a lot about you and what you're interested in. And we want to give you that big boost up, that leg up, and give you that chance to be part of a new field, you know, this field of energy that Lori and I are creating in this conversation. So go back and listen to it again, because there'll be more that will unfold.
There's definitely been a lot of energy shifting and moving. So I know we made a lot of energetic expansion here too. So anyway, I'm going to be quiet now. I just thank you so much for having me. I love you.
I love you too, Lori. Thank you so much. And I know everyone is so grateful. We are so much. Thank you for being with us.
Joy. All right. Love you. See you next time.
Love all of you. See you soon. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful day.